Good morning or good afternoon, hoops and hockey fans. Big Al here on this Monday, February 10th, 2025, and we are about to look into the latest NBA and NHL standings plus the playoff races in both leagues. And these are games played through February 9th. So, before we begin, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, ring the bell, and get notified every time I go live, and off we go. With the current NBA standings as of February 9th, 2025. We'll start in the Eastern Conference, and as you know, the top 6 teams in each conference in the NBA make the playoffs, and 7 through 10 will get into the play-in tournament. So, the top seed right now in the Eastern Conference is the Cleveland Cavaliers with a record of 42-10. They are 24-4 at home, 18-6 on the road, 9-1 in their division, the Central, and 28-7 overall versus the East. They've scored 122.4 points per game and allowed 112.1 points per game for an average of plus 10.3. The Cavs have won 2 in a row, and they are 6-4 over their last 10. The Boston Celtics are the number 2 seed right now. They currently lead the Atlantic Division with a record of 37-16. They are 5.5 games behind the top-seeded Cavaliers. Boston is 16-10 at home and 21-6 on the road, 7-2 within the Atlantic, 27-9 in the conference. They average 117.5 points per game and allow 108.7 per, for a difference of plus 8.8 per game. The Celtics won their last matchup, and they are 7-3 over their last 10 games. The New York Knicks are up next at the number 3 spot with a record of 34-18. They are the second place team in the Atlantic Division and 8 games behind Cleveland for the top spot in the East. The Knicks are 18-10 at home, 16-8 away from MSG, 9-2 in the Atlantic, and 23-11 versus the East. They average 117.7 points per game and allow 111.8 for a difference of 5.9 points per game. New York did lose its last game, but they are 7-3 in their previous 10. Number 4 is the Indiana Pacers. This is the second place team in the Central. They have a record of 29-22. They trail Cleveland by 12.5 games. They are 14-7 at home, 14-14 on the road, 6-4 in the Central Division, and 17-15 as a whole in the East. They average 115.7 points per game and allow 115.1. Point differential per game is plus 0.6. The Pacers lost their last game, and they are 7-3 over their last 10. The Milwaukee Bucks have fallen into the number 5 spot with a record of 28-23. They are presently 3rd in the Central. They are 13.5 games behind the Cavs for number 1 in the East. 17-8 record at home, but only 10-15 on the road. 6-5 in their division and 23-16 in the East. They average 114.6 points per game and allow 112.9 for a difference of plus 1.7. They've won their last game, and they are only 4-6 in their previous 10. The Detroit Pistons sit in the number 6 spot with a record of 27-26. They are 4th in the Central, and they are 15.5 games out behind the Cavs. They are 14-13 at home and 13-13 on the road, only 2-9 within their division, and 19-20 in the East. The Pistons average 112.9 points per game while allowing 113.5. Their point differential is minus 0.6. They've won 2 games in a row and are 5-5 over their last 10. 7 through 10 in each conference will make the play-in tournament, and the next 4 teams would be in the play-in tournament in the Eastern Conference. Starting off with the Miami Heat as the number 7 seed. They are presently the Southeast Division leaders with a record of 25-25. They trail Cleveland by 16 games for the top spot in the East. The Heat are 12-10 at home, 12-15 on the road, 5-3 within the Southeast, and 14-15 in the conference. The Heat averages 110.5 points per game while allowing 110.6. Differential is minus 0.1. They lost their last game and are 5-5 over their last 10. The second place team in the Southeast is the Orlando Magic, currently number 8 in the East at 26-28. They are 1 game behind Miami in the Southeast and 17 behind Cleveland for the top spot in the East. They have a very good 16-9 home record, but on the road they are just 10-19. Orlando is 5-2 within their division and 20-15 in the East. They only average 104 points per game, which is the lowest of any offense in the Eastern Conference, but they've only given up 105.7 per game, which is number 1 in the Eastern Conference. Their point differential per game is minus 1.7. They won their last game, but are only 3-7 in their last 10. The third place team in the Southeast Division would be the number 9 seed presently in the East, and that's the Atlanta Hawks at 25-28. Right now, 17.5 games behind the Cavs, 12-12 at home, 13-15 on the road, 5-2 in their division, 18-13 versus the East. The Hawks score 116.2 points per game while allowing 118.8 points per game. Average differential per game is minus 2.6. 2 straight wins for Atlanta, but they're only 3-7 in their last 10. And the Chicago Bulls would be the last team in to the play-in tournament as of right now. They're the 10 seed in the East with a record of 22-31, 20.5 games behind the Cavaliers. 10-17 at the United Center this year, 12-14 away from the United Center. Only 3-7 versus the Central, 17-18 versus the East. They average 116.6 points per game while allowing 120.3 points per game. Differential is minus 3.7 points per game. They've dropped 2 in a row, and they are 4-6 in their last 10. Outside of the playoffs as of right now would be the Philadelphia 76ers at 20-32. They are 1.5 games behind the Bulls for that last play-in spot in the East and 22 games back in the conference. 10-16 both home and away, 3-4 in their division, 14-18 in the East. They score 109.5 points per game and allow 113.3 points per game. Average differential is minus 3.8. The Sixers have lost 3 in a row, but they are playing .500 ball over their last 10 games at 5-5. The Brooklyn Nets would be up next at 18-34. They are currently 3.5 games behind the Bulls for that last play-in spot. Terrible at home, 7-17. Not much better on the road at 11-17. They are an abysmal 1-8 versus the Atlantic this year and 9-23 versus the East. The Nets have scored 105.3 points per game, allowed 111.7. Average differential is minus 6.4. They did win their last game, and they are 4-6 in their last 10. Next up are the Toronto Raptors. This is the last place team in the Atlantic. 16 and 37. They are 6 games out behind Chicago for that number 10 play-in spot. They are 12 and 16 at home, but very bad on the road. 4 and 21. 3 and 7 in the Atlantic, 10 and 23 overall in the East. They've scored 110.7 points per game, 116.5. Average differential is minus 5.8. And they are ice cold. They've lost 4 in a row, and they are 5 and 5 in their last 10. The Charlotte Hornets are next up. This is the 4th place team in the Southeast with a record of 13 and 37. They are currently 7.5 games behind the Bulls for that last play-in spot in the East. They are 9 and 20 at home, 4 and 17 on the road. They have not won a division game in 9 tries, and they are 7 and 28 versus the East. The Hornets average 107 points per game while allowing 112.3 points per game. Average differential is minus 5.3. They've lost their last game, and they are just 2 and 8 over their last 10. Then you've got the Washington Wizards, presently sitting with the NBA's worst record at 9 and 43. They are a whopping 12.5 games behind Chicago for that last play-in spot. They are 5 and 21 at home, 4 and 21 on the road, rather. They do have a winning record in their division at 5 and 4, so there's something. But they're 7 and 22 overall versus the East. The Wizards average 107.9 points per game, allow 121.6. Their point differential is an NBA worst 13.7 points per game. The Wizards have dropped 2 in a row, and they are 3 and 7 in their last 10 games. Not too long ago, this team had a 14-game losing streak. So that's what it looks like in the East. Let's jump over to the West. The number 1 seed in the West presently is the Oklahoma City Thunder. They have the best record in the NBA at 42 and 9, 23 and 3 at home, 18 and 6 on the road. 7 and 1 in their division, which is the Northwest Division, and they are 24 and 8 in the West overall. The Thunder score 117.8 points per game while allowing only 104.8. Point differential is plus 13 per game, which is tops in the NBA. And they're on a heater right now. They've won 5 in a row, and they are 8 and 2 over their last 10 games. The number 2 seed is the current Southwest Division leaders, and that's the Memphis Grizzlies at 35 and 17. They are 7.5 games off behind Oklahoma City for the top spot in the West. Very good record at home, 21 and 6. Very pedestrian on the road, though, at 14 and 11. They are 8 and 4 in their division and 19 and 13 in the West. And this team can score in bunches. They average 123.5 points per game, which I think leads the league. And they allow 115.6 points per game. Average point differential is plus 7.9. The Grizzlies did lose their last game, and they're 8 and 2 in their last 10. Second place team in the Northwest is the Denver Nuggets, currently the 3 seed in the West at 34 and 19. They trail Oklahoma City in the conference by 9 games. 17 and 8 at home, 17 and 11 on the road. Only 4 and 4 within their division, and 20 and 12 versus the West. They score 120.9 points per game, allow 115.7. Average differential is plus 5.2. They're hot as well. They've won 6 in a row, and they are 7 and 3 over their last 10 games. The Houston Rockets are the current second place team in the Southwest Division and the 4 seed in the West with a record of 33 and 20. They are 10 back of the Thunder for number 1. 16 and 8 at home, 17 and 11 on the road, a very impressive 9 and 3 within their division, and 19 and 12 versus the West. The Rockets average 112.9 points per game, allow 108.7. Average differential per game is 4.2. They won their last game, but they are below average over their last 10, just 4 and 6. There you have your first place team in the Pacific Division, and that's LeBron James and the LA Lakers, sitting in the 5 spot in the West at 31 and 19. They are 10.5 games behind Oklahoma City for the top record in the West. LA is 18 and 6 at home, 13 and 13 on the road, 9 and 3 versus the Pacific, 19 and 11 against the West. They average 112.8 points per game and allow 112.1. Average differential is plus 0.7. The Lakers are also playing well. They've won 5 straight, and they are 9 and 1 in their last 10. And that's the best record in the NBA over the past 10 games for any team. Then you have your third place team in the Northwest, and that's the Minnesota Timberwolves, sitting in the 6th spot at 30 and 23. They are 13 games out behind the Thunder in the division and the conference. 15 and 12 at home, 15 and 11 on the road, 5 and 3 in their division, 22 and 14 versus the West. They average 111.7 points per game and allow 108 points per game. Average differential is plus 3.7. They've won 3 in a row, and they are 8 and 2 over their last 10 games. Now, those would be your 6 teams that would go to the playoffs as of right now. The next 4 teams would make the play-in tournament, starting with the second place team in the Pacific, the LA Clippers, with a record of 29 and 23, currently the 7th seed in the West. They are 3 games out behind the Lakers in the division and 13.5 behind the Thunder for tops in the West. 18 and 10 at home, 11 and 13 on the road, 6 and 4 in their division, 18 and 18 in the East. They average 110.5 points per game and allow 107.8. Average differential is plus 2.7. They won their last game, and they are 5 and 5 over their last 10. The 8th seed in the West presently and in the play-in tournament as of right now are the Dallas Mavericks, who just traded Luka Doncic just a few weeks ago. The Mavericks are 28 and 25. They are 15 games behind the Thunder for number 1 in the West, 15 and 10 at the American Airlines Center, and 13 and 15 on the road. 6 and 4 in their division, 20 and 17 in the West. They average 115.5 points per game and allow 113.3. Average differential is plus 2.2. They've won 2 straight and are 5 and 5 in their last 10. The third place team in the Pacific is the number 9 seed in the West presently, and that's the Sacramento Kings at 26 and 26. They are 16.5 games behind the Thunder for number 1 in the West. 14 and 13 at home, 12 and 13 on the road. 4 and 6 record in the division, 17 and 17 versus the West. They average 116.2 points per game, allow 115.4. Average differential is plus 0.8. They won their last game, and they are only 4 and 6 in their last 10. The Phoenix Suns will make up the last spot in the play-in tournament as they sit 10th in the West, also 26 and 26 and 16.5 games out behind the Thunder. They are 16 and 10 at home, but only 10 and 16 on the road. 7 and 4 versus the Pacific, and 17 and 15 in the conference. Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm awake too, Edgar. How y'all doing? Alright, the Suns average 113.3 points per game and allow 114.8. Average differential is minus 1.5. They lost their last game, and they're playing 500 ball over their last 10 games, 5-5. On the outside of the playoffs, you've got the Golden State Warriors, who are also 26-26. So the bottom three teams in the Pacific all have the same record. But right now, two of those three would get into the playoffs. The Warriors would be the exception. They are also 16.5 behind the Thunder for number one in the West. 15-13 home record, 11-13 on the road. They are terrible in their division, just 1-10. Thanks, Edgar. That was a fun game to watch. I had a great time the entire way. They are 17-18 versus the West. They average 111.9 points per game, and they allow 111.9, so their differential is 0. Ooh, yeah, I'll definitely catch you tonight in the chats, Edgar. Have a good one at work. Okay, let's see here. The Warriors won their last game, and they are 5-5 in their last 10 games. So they are tied with Sacramento and Phoenix for those last two play-in spots in the West. But based on tiebreakers, they would be the odd man out of the three. Speaking of odd men out, that brings us to the San Antonio Spurs at 22-28. They are currently 3 games out of that play-in tournament and 19.5 behind the Thunder for the division lead, or the conference lead rather. They are 13-12 at home, but only 8-15 on the road. 2-7 in their division, the Southwest, and 16-18 in the West. They score 112.8 points per game, allow 114.3. Their average differential is minus 1.5. They've dropped back-to-back games, and they are only 3-7 over their last 10. Then you've got the Portland Trailblazers next up at 23-20. They are 3.5 games out of the play-in tournament. Winning record at home 15-13, but terrible on the road at 8-17. 4-6 versus their division, 14-25 in the West. Score 108.8 points per game and 113.9 points allowed per game. Average differential is minus 5.1. They've dropped their last game, and they are 8-2 over their last 10, so they are playing better recently. Next, the Utah Jazz, 12-39. They are 13.5 games out of the play-in tournament at this rate. 5-18 at home, 7-21 on the road, 1-7 versus the Northwest, and 4-30 in the West as a whole. They score 111.8 points per game, allow 119.1. Average differential is minus 7.3. They've dropped back-to-back games, and they are 2-8 in their last 10. The New Orleans Pelicans brings up the rear in the Western Conference with a 12-40 record. They are 14 games out of the play-in tournament as of right now. 8-18 at home, 4-22 on the road. Very bad in their division, the Southwest, where they're 1-8 and 6-24 overall versus the Western Conference. The Pelicans score 110.2 points per game and allow 118.8. Average differential is minus 8.6, and they are freezing cold down in New Orleans. They've dropped 8 in a row and are 2-8 over their last 10 games. So that's a look at the NBA standings through February 9th. Now we're going to turn our attention to the National Hockey League, which is now on a 2-week break as the Four Nations face-off gets underway starting tomorrow, or rather Wednesday, I should say. So the NHL will be off for the next 2 weeks. We'll start in the Eastern Conference with the Atlantic Division. The Florida Panthers, 57 games played, 34-20-3 record for 71 points, 28 regulation wins, 30 regulation and overtime wins, and they are 4-0 in the shootout. They have a 17-9-2 record at home, 17-11-1 on the road. They've scored 192 goals, allowed 165, differential plus 27. They are 7-3 in their last 10, and they've won 2 straight. Second place are the Toronto Maple Leafs, 55 games and a record of 33-20-2 for 68 points. 28 regulation wins, 33 regulation and overtime wins, and they have yet to play a shootout this year. 19-11 at home, but a little better on the road, 14-9-2. They've scored 169 goals, allowed 156, differential is plus 13. They are 6-4 in their last 10, and they did lose their last matchup. The Tampa Bay Lightning would also be in the playoffs as the third place team in the Atlantic Division. 55 games played, 31-20-4 record, 66 points, 26 regulation wins, 30 regulation and overtime wins, and they are 1-1 in the shootout. They are 18-7-2 at home, 13-13-2 on the road. They've scored 197 goals, allowed 153. Goal differential is plus 44. They are 6-3-1 in their last 10, including 4 straight wins. In fourth place in the Atlantic, you've got the Ottawa Senators. 56 games played, 29-23-4 for 62 points. 22 regulation wins, 28 regulation and overtime wins, and 1-1 in the shootout. They are 16-7-2 at home, 13-16-2 on the road, scored 158 goals, allowed 156. Goal differential is plus 2. They are 5-5 in the last 10 games, but they are trending in the wrong direction, losing 3 straight. The Detroit Red Wings are in 5th place in the Atlantic, 55 games played and a record of 28-22-5 for 61 points, 21 regulation wins, 25 regulation and overtime wins, and 3-0 in the shootout. They are 15-12-2 at home, 13-10-3 on the road. Scored 160 goals, allowed 171. Goal differentials minus 11. They are 7-2-1 over their last 10, and they did lose their last game to Tampa after a 7-game win streak. The Boston Bruins have fallen to 6th place in this division. 57 games played, 27-24-6 record for 60 points, 20 regulation wins, 27 wins in regulation and overtime, 0-1 in the shootout. 18-9-3 at home, 9-15-3 on the road, 157 goals scored, 182 allowed, minus 25 differential, 5-5 in their last 10, including 2 straight losses. Then you have the Montreal Canadiens in 7th place, 56 games, 25-26-5 record for 55 points, 18 regulation wins, 23 regulation or overtime wins, and they are 2-2 in the shootout this year. 13-12-4 at home, 12-14-1 on the road. 163 goals scored to 184 allowed. Goal differential is minus 31. They are cold. They are 2-7-1 in their last 10, and they've dropped 3 in a row. And sitting at the bottom of the Atlantic are the Buffalo Sabres. 54 games played and a record of 22-27-5 for 49 points. That's the worst in the East. 18 regulation wins, 20 regulation and overtime wins, and they are 2-1 in the shootout. 13-12-3 record at home, 9-15-2 on the road. They've scored 171 goals while giving up 185. Goal differential is minus 14. They are 5-5 over their last 10 and lost their last game. In the Metropolitan Division, that's led by the Washington Capitals. 55 games played, 36-11-8 for 80 points. 31 regulation wins, 36 wins in regulation or overtime, but the shootouts have not been their friend. They are 0-3 in the shootout. 17-4-6 at home, 19-7-2 on the road. They've scored 196 goals, gave up 140. Differential is plus 56. They are 6-1-3 over their last 10, including a loss in their last game. The Carolina Hurricanes would be the second place team in the Metro Division. 56 games played, 33-19-4, 70 points. 29 regulation wins, 33 regulation and overtime wins, 0-2 in the shootout. They are 21-6-1 at home, really good. Not so much on the road though, 12-13-3. They scored 184 goals, allowed 154, differentials plus 30. They are 6-3-1 in their last 10, including a win in their last game. The New Jersey Devils, sitting comfortably in third in the Metro Division, 57 games played, 31-20-6 record, 68 points, 27 regulation wins, 30 wins in regulation and overtime, 1-1 in the shootout. 15-9-4 at home, 16-11-2 on the road, 175 goals scored to 142 allowed, differentials plus 33. They are 5-5 in their last 10, including a win in their last game. The fourth place Columbus Blue Jackets have kind of fallen back to earth recently. 56 games played, 26-22-8 record for 60 points. 18 regulation wins, 22 in regulation and overtime, and 4-1 in the shootout. They are 17-6-4 at home, but real bad on the road, 9-16-4. They've scored, 184 goals, allowed 186. Differential is -2. They are 4-5-1 in their last 10, including 4 straight losses. Fifth place in the Metro are the New York Rangers. They're starting to turn things around. 55 games played, 27-24-4 record for 58 points. 25 regulation wins, 26 in regulation and overtime, and 1-0 in the shootout. 14-12-2 at Madison Square Garden this season, 13-12-2 away from MSG. They scored 165 goals, allowed 168 for a difference of -3. They are 5-4-1 in their last 10, including a win in their most recent game. Then you got the New York Islanders in 6th place, right behind them. 55 games played, 25-23-7 for 57 points. 19 regulation wins, 23 regulation and overtime wins, 2-1 in the shootout. 13-11-2 at home, 12-12-5 on the road. They scored 152 goals, allowed 162, differential is -10. They did drop 2 straight, but they are 7-3 over their last 10, so they are playing better. And then the 2 Pennsylvania teams round out this division. The Pittsburgh Penguins are in 7th place, 57 games played, 23-25-9 record, 55 points, 16 regulation wins, 22 in regulation and overtime, but they are an abysmal 1-5 in the shootout. 13-10-4 record at home, 10-15-5 on the road, 164 goals scored, 201 goals allowed, differential -37, 4-5-1 in their last 10, including a loss in their most recent. And then the Philadelphia Flyers, same amount of games played, same amount of points. 57 games, 24-26-7 record for 55 points, 15 wins in regulation, 21 in both regulation and overtime, and 3-3 in the shootout. They are 13-13-1 at home, 11-13-6 on the road. They've scored 162 goals while allowing 192. Differential is -30. They are 3-6-1 in their last 10, including a win in their most recent. On to the Western Conference. We'll start with the Central Division, led by the Winnipeg Jets, who have the best record in the NHL through February 9th. 56 games played, 39, 14, and 3 for 81 points. 33 regulation wins, 39 in regulation and overtime. And like the Maple Leafs, the Jets have yet to play a shootout game this year. 22, 5, and 3 at home, that's very impressive. And 17 and 9 on the road. 202 goals scored, 134 allowed. Differential was plus 68, which is the best in the NHL. They are 8 and 2 in their last 10 with 8 straight wins. Next are the Dallas Stars in second place in the Central. 55 games played, 35, 18, and 2 for 72 points, 29 regulation wins, 33 regulation overtime wins, 2 and 1 in the shootout. They are 20 up, 7 down, and 1 OT loss at home, 15, 11, and 1 on the road. They scored 182 goals and allowed 139 for a differential of plus 43. They are 7, 2, and 1 in their last 10, including a win in their most recent game. The Minnesota Wild hanging on to third place in the Central Division. 56 games played, 33, 19, and 4 record for 70 points. 27 regulation wins, 31 in regulation and overtime, and 2 and 2 in the shootout. They are 13, 12, and 1 at home, but they're much better on the road. 20 up, 7 down with 3 overtime losses. 163 goals scored, 159 allowed, differential pedestrian plus 4. They are 6 and 4 over their last 10, and they've won 2 in a row. In fourth place, you got the Colorado Avalanche. 57 games played, 33, 22, and 2 record for 68 points. 28 regulation wins, 32 in regulation and overtime, 1 and 1 in the shootout. 16, 10, and 2 at Ball Arena this year, 17 and 12 away from Ball Arena. 186 goals scored, 174 goals allowed. Differential is plus 12. They are 5, 4, and 1 in their last 10, including 2 straight wins. In fifth place, you've got the Utah Hockey Club, which are the old Arizona Coyotes. 56 games played, 24, 23, and 9 record, 57 points, 16 regulation wins, 23 in regulation and overtime, and 1 and 2 in the shootout. 9, 12, and 6 at home, 15, 11, and 3 on the road, 158 goals scored to 170. Average or differential is minus 12. They are 4, 4, and 2 in their last 10, including a win in their most recent game. Then you've got the St. Louis Blues, 56 points, or 56 games played rather, record of 25, 26, and 5 for 55 points, 17 regulation wins, 22 regulation overtime wins, 3 and 0 in the shootout. 12, 14, and 2 at home, 13, 12, and 3 on the road. 154 goals scored to 171 allowed. Differential is minus 17. They are 3, 6, and 1 in their last 10, and they won their most recent game. They had the Nashville Predators, who's had a down season. 54 games played. Their record is 19, 28, and 7, 45 points. 16 regulation wins, 18 in regulation and overtime, 1 and 0 in the shootout. 13, 10, and 3 at home, but very abysmal on the road, 6, 18, and 4. They've scored 144 goals, gave up 179, differentials minus 35, 4 and 6 in their last 10, including a victory in their most recent game. And at the bottom of the Central, you've got the Chicago Blackhawks. 55 games played, 17, 31, and 7 for 41 points, 15 regulation wins, 16 in regulation and overtime, 1 and 2 in the shootout. 11, 14, and 3 record at the United Center this season, 6, 17, and 4 on the road. They've scored 149 goals, allowed 191. Differential is minus 42. They are 3, 3, and 4 in their last 10, and they lost their most recent game. And now over to the Pacific Division. led by the Edmonton Oilers, although there is a tie with the Vegas Golden Knights in terms of points. The Oilers played 55 games. They are 34-17-4 for 72 points, 25 regulation wins, 34 regulation and overtime, 0-1 in the shootout. 18-10-2 record at home versus 16-7-2 on the road. 182 goals scored, 152 goals allowed, differentials plus 30. They are 5-4-1 in their last 10, but they did lose their most recent game. Tied with them points-wise atop the division are the Vegas Golden Knights. 56 games played, 33-17-6 record for 72 points. 30 regulation wins, 32 in regulation and overtime, and they are 1-2 in the shootout. 19-6-3 at home, 14-11-3 on the road. 185 goals scored to 155 allowed. They also have a plus 30 differential. They are 4-3-3 in their last 10, including 2 straight wins. The Los Angeles Kings are in the third spot in the Pacific. 53 games played, 29-17-7, 65 points. 26 regulation wins, 28 regulation and overtime wins, 1-2 in the shootout. Very impressive at home, 17-3-2. Their road record is 12-14-5. 151 goals scored, 136 goals allowed, plus 15 differential, 4-4-2 in their last 10, and a loss in their most recent game. In fourth place, not too far behind the Kings, are the Vancouver Canucks. 55 games played, 26-18-11, 63 points. 21 regulation wins, 25 regulation and overtime wins, 1-1 in the shootout. 11-10-7 record at home, 15-8-4 road record. 155 goals scored, 166 allowed, differences minus 11. 6-3-1 in their last 10, including 3 straight wins. Next are the Calgary Flames. 55 games played, 26-21-8 record, 60 points. 20 regulation wins, 23 wins in regulation and overtime, 3-1 in the shootout. 16-10-4 home record, 10-11-4 road record. 148 goals scored to 165 allowed, differential is minus 17. 4-5-1 in their last 10, including 3 straight losses. In sixth place, you have the Anaheim Ducks. 54 games played, 24-24-6 for 54 points. 17 regulation wins, 21 in regulation and overtime, and 3-2 in the shootout. 13-12-2 home record, 11-12-4 road record. Scored 137 goals, allowed 165, differential is minus 28. They're turning it around though. They're 6-3-1 in their last 10, including 3 straight wins. The Seattle Kraken sit in 7th place in the Pacific. 57 games played, 24-29-4 record for 52 points. 19 regulation wins, 23 wins in regulation or overtime, 1-3 in the shootout. 13-14-4 record at home, 11-15 on the road. 169 goals scored to 183 allowed. Differential is minus 14. They are 4-5-1 in their last 10, including a win in their last game. And rounding out the Pacific Division and the league overall are the San Jose Sharks. 57 games played, 15-35-7 record for 37 points, 11 regulation wins, 15 in regulation or overtime, 0-4 in the shootout. They are 9-18-2 at home, 6-17-5 on the road. They've scored 148 goals and allowed a league high 216. Their minus 68 goal scoring differential is also the worst. 1-8-1 in their last 10, including 4 straight losses. So as it sits right now, the top 3 in the Atlantic would be Florida, Toronto, and Tampa. Top 3 in the Metro would be Washington, Carolina, and New Jersey. Top 3 in the Central are Winnipeg, Dallas, and Minnesota. Top 3 in the Pacific are Edmonton, Vancouver, and LA. Okay, looking at the wild card races. As it sits right now, Ottawa and Detroit would be the 2 wild card teams in the East. Both Columbus and Boston are 1 point out. New York Rangers are 3 points out. New York Islanders 4 points out. Montreal, Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia are all 6 points out. And Buffalo, long shot for them to get in, they're 12 points out. And then out west, your 2 wildcard teams would be Colorado and Vancouver. Calgary, as it sits, they are 3 points out of the playoffs. Utah is 6 points out. St. Louis 8 points out. Anaheim 9 points out. Seattle is 11 points out. Nashville is 18 points out. Chicago is 22 points out, and San Jose would be 26 points out. Alright, that is a look at the NBA and NHL standings through February 9th. We'll only do the NBA standings next week, since the NHL will still be on its 4 nations break until February 22nd. So we'll only do the NBA standings next week. So make sure you join me for that. And the season finale of the week that was looks at Super Bowl 59 between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. I will be back in a couple hours at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, and I will break that entire game down. In the meantime, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell and get notified every time I go live. Big Al signing off. Thanks for watching. And enjoy all the sports action. Peace out.